Hi, I'm Norm Abram. Welcome to the New Yankee Workshop. Today, part 8 of our mini-series on the shop-built kitchen. Today we're going to build the bar, a place for all the beverages. And not just any ordinary bar, but a very elegant bar. That's next, right here in the New Yankee Workshop. Before we get started, I wanted to show you the existing conditions because you haven't seen the place for a while. The bar is going to fit into this alcove where the old one used to be installed. There's a couple conditions I have to deal with. First of all, the walls are not perfectly square in these corners. This one flares out about 1/4 of an inch, this one about 1/8 of an inch, but that's not going to be a problem. There'll be a base cabinet. In the middle there'll be 2 doors, 2 drawers. Over here there'll be another door and a false front because there'll be a small bar sink. That cabinet will come off this wall. Then I'm leaving an opening like you would for a dishwasher, 24 inches, except here it's going to be a wine cooler. I can make up the out of squareness with the style right here. I can make that fit so that everything comes out just right. Now up on the wall, we're going to have a cabinet. We're going to take these casings off. There'll be a wall cabinet, and now we're going to have true divided light glass panels in the doors. We want to see through it. The back will have a mirror. The shelves will be glass. Now the whole area in here wants to look like a piece of furniture. So we're going to build it out of some real nice cherry, including the countertop. Let me show you the carcass for the base. This carcass is constructed using the same techniques we've used on all the other cabinets in the kitchen, starting with this pre-finished plywood. It's a little more expensive, but it's worth it. You never have to finish the inside of the cabinet. It's a baked-on finish. It's very durable. Now, as far as techniques of construction, I use rabbet joints or dado joints wherever possible, plenty of glue and screws to assemble it. Wherever there's a plywood edge that shows, I put on a heat-activated edge band. Now, you notice a hole in the bottom of this. That's so I can access that toe kick heater if necessary. There'll also be a cutout in the toe kick itself. Now, here's the face frame. Made out of cherry. If you look at the back side, you can see that all the intersections are connected with pocket screw joinery. I've cut slots for the biscuits, which will intersect with these grooves in the carcass. The assembly is done with biscuits and glue only. I'll clamp it in place. I don't want any mechanical fasteners because this piece is going to have a natural finish. This continuous groove that I've put in all the edges is a real plus. We saw it at a cabinet shop, and it makes putting these face frames on a lot easier. Well, while this cooks, I thought we'd pay a visit to a private residence not far from here, where the cabinet shop that taught us the technique of installing face frames this way built a wonderful bar. Maybe we can learn a few more tricks. The first floor of this building is a brand new timber frame, and what a wonderful space. They have a game area with a billiard table over here, a nice seating area in front of a fieldstone fireplace, and look at all the timbers. They are wonderful old timbers. Now right off the entertainment area is what I want you to see. It's this bar which is built into the alcove. Look at these cabinets, leaded glass panels with the old-fashioned glass. And the walls in here have the appearance of leather, but it's actually a faux finish. It looks great. Nice bar surface with room for the stools. And over here I can get a closer look at those cabinets. On the inside we see that the leaded glass is held in place with these moldings which are screwed in place, so if this ever has to be taken out or repaired, that's easy. The shelves are 3/8 inch thick glass, which is what we want to do, and they're just held in place with some adjustable shelf pins. Some interior lighting, which is a great idea. And look at how the cabinet flows into the ceiling with that nice cornice. The corner details are great. It looks like a post. The corners are chamfered, sort of a concave chamfer, and it has these nice decorative brackets or blocks right up at the top. And I really like the fact that the sides have glass because it really gets you to look inside. Now I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I lowered this section of the bar. Come around the other side. Now down below, plenty of storage, pre-finished plywood just like we're using on adjustable shelves. A door that leads out to a nice brick patio. And over here, a little bit of a change. The countertop changes to granite. There's a copper sink and some under cabinet lighting. And down below, small refrigerator. But one of the most amazing features in this space is the ceiling. Take a look at that skylight. A leaded glass pane, much in the Frank Lloyd Wright motif. And if you look at the tray that comes down from that skylight, the rope lights give an illusion that it's curved, but it's actually flat. It just angles down. And it sure does bring a lot of light into this space. You know, I could imagine spending some time on either side of this bar. Well, that was quite a bar. Now, ours won't have a leaded glass skylight, but we'll have plenty of cherry. Here's the wall cabinet. Now, the back is MDO because we're going to install a mirror here. But everything else is cherry veneer plywood. And here I have the face frame made out of solid cherry. It's 7/8 of an inch thick, and it has the bead detail already on the face frame. And one thing I have to pay attention to is that mirror. It's going to see the back of everything, which means I'll see the pockets that I made for the pocket screws. But there's an easy way to fix that. The manufacturer actually makes plugs specifically designed for these pockets. So I just glue them in place, and when the glue sets, we'll sand them flush. All right, we'll let the face frame cook on our upper cabinet and think about the doors. Now, when we were in the cabinet maker's shop, we visited their showroom, and they had some nice true divided light cabinet doors, and we thought that would be nice for our project. So here I've made up a small sample. We have stiles, rails, muttons, and mullions. Now, to make these, I need a router bit set, which is a matched pair for the stiles and rails and a rabbiting bit. I've prepared my stock, which is solid cherry, 7/8 of an inch thick, and that accounts for the profile of the design as well as room for the rabbet for the glass. I've laid out mortises where the pieces are going to intersect, and that's the first thing I want to do. I'm going to use my hollow chisel mortiser, which is set up with a 1/4 inch bit, and I'm going to make mortises 3/4 of an inch deep. But before we use any power tools, let's talk about shop safety. Be sure to read, understand, and follow all the safety rules that come with your power tools. Knowing how to use your power tools properly will greatly reduce the risk of personal injury. And remember this, there is no more important safety rule than to wear these safety glasses. Now, these pieces are going to be used to make the muttons, and I'm actually going to get 2 out of each piece. So I want a mortise from each side so that the mortise goes all the way through, and those will receive the mullions. Look again at our mock-up, and I'm going to pull out one of the rails, and I'll show you what I want to do next. I want to start forming these tenons. I need to make a couple shoulder cuts, one on the face, one on the back. I'll make the cope later. The one in the back is a 1/16 of an inch lower than the one on the front, and that has to be very precisely cut. Now, here's the setup. I've installed a stop block, and I've set the distance to give me the correct shoulder cut length. Then I've set the depth of the blade to the correct height, and I'll guide the pieces through with my miter gauge. Now I want to move my fence a 1/16 of an inch away and make the opposite cut. Now, this device allows me to cut the cheeks on each tenon very precisely, and we'll do that next. Now, here over at my router table, I'm adjusting the cope bit so that it just kisses the bottom of that tenon. Now I'm ready to run my pieces. The important thing here is to keep the face side down. Here I've set up the corresponding bit to the cope bit I used earlier. And I want to run that profile on the edge of all the rails, stiles, muttons, and mullions. Now, the instructions that come with the bits are helpful, but I found making a mock-up is important and being very careful and precise with every step, because as you can see, I can't quite test the fit yet. It won't go together until I make the final rabbets on the back. Here's a model of one of the horizontal pieces, the muttons. And what I want to do is get 2 out of each piece. I mentioned earlier that I was going to cut these pieces in half. So I'll rip them to 7/8, then I can profile the other edge. Clean up the face that I just ripped. I want to clean it up by making a pass through the joiner. Now the idea is to mill the profile on this edge I just cut. Now I could try to run it through freehand, but there's not a lot of support there for the piece. It's a little bit dangerous. So I made this guide. It's a piece of poplar, a little thinner than the cherry stock, with some 1/4-inch plywood on the top. I take the piece that I want to machine, set it in the jig against the stop. Now it's firmly held in place. I push it up against the fence and I can guide it through safely, and my fingers are clear of the bit. Well, now I've installed a rabbiting bit, and I've just run it in a little ways because I want to check it before I finish running these pieces. So I'll bring it over to my table here, take one of the rails, slide it into the mortise, and you can see that it's a nice tight fit on the outside as well as on the inside. Now I had to go through every single step before I knew if I would end up with a perfect joint. That's why this is such a challenging project to do. Now I'll run the rabbets on the rest of the pieces and I'll call it a night. We'll glue these up tomorrow. Well, good morning. Where you been? I thought you'd never get here. I've already dry fitted one of our true divided light doors together. What do you think? Not bad for serial number 1. Take a look at the joints between the muttons and the mullions. They're nice and tight, as well as where they meet the stiles, and our rails fit nicely. Now over here I'm going to show you the second door and how it actually will get assembled. I'm going to do another dry fit. I want to make sure everything fits before I put any glue. First, this center mullion goes into the muttons, then the bottom one, the top one, and then I can slide the rails in, just making sure that all those joints fit nice and tight. Then I'm going to take this assembly, which is a little loose, and get it to go into one of the stiles. Just bring each piece into those mortises we made, one at a time. Okay, now just take my mallet and tap them into place. Okay, that's good. Now I get the other stile and get this one in. Okay, now just tap these down. That's good. Everything fits great. Let's see what it's going to look like on the carcass. Oh, I have to trim it a little bit, but that's going to make a very nice cabinet, don't you think? Now I have to break it apart and glue it up. Now, I don't have a lot of glue to put on, but I want to put a little coat at every joint to lock it together. Now if there's any squeeze out of glue, I want to clean that immediately because this is going to have a natural finish. Well, before I go any further, I want to glue up my countertop because that's going to have to set for a while. And remember that bar we saw a little while ago? That had a cherry countertop, and that's what we're using. We're lucky. I have a hardwood supplier not far from here that stocks all different sizes of hardwoods and all different species. This is known as 6/4, which means it measures 1 1/4 inches thick. 6/4 by 10, 9 1/4 inches wide. Now cherry generally will have some sapwood, and if I flip this piece over you can see the sapwood. It's this light colored wood right along the edge. It's not a problem. I don't want to see it in the finished piece, so if I face it down, I eliminate that. I also looked for some pieces that had some nice figure to them. You can see there's nice grain in these pieces. I also want to make sure that the front edge of my counter doesn't have any sapwood because I want it to look nice and rich all the way down the edge. Now these are 8-foot pieces. I only need about 80 inches, so I'm going to trim off the ends. We'll save these for another project. Now right out of the mill, these are pretty consistent in thickness, but to make sure I want to run them through my surface planer. Let's slide them back together. The grain pattern looks nice. Now the joints are not tight. I want them to be tight in the dry fit. I don't want to use clamps to pull them together, so I'll straighten the edges at the joiner. All right, I've got all the edges jointed and they look good. Now to glue this up, glue alone would be plenty. With this much surface, that's enough to hold the boards together, and especially with the glues we use today. However, if you look at the boards, you can see a couple of them are bowed a bit. If I cut some slots or some biscuits, it'll make it a lot easier to align them flush when I clamp them up. Now this is what's going to do the heavy work, our glue. And this is a waterproof glue, and being that the wet bar is in a damp area, we don't have to worry about it ever coming apart. All right, it's all clamped up and I've removed any squeeze out of the glue. We'll set this aside and start making some doors for the base cabinet. Before I size the doors, it's helpful to install the bead around the openings. You've seen me make this bead material out of poplar before. Of course, here it's going to be cherry. I'm mitering the corners, and when I get all the pieces fitted, I'll glue them and attach them with a few pin nails. With a little glue on the back, I just snap these pieces in place and attach them with pins. Pins have no heads like brads. They're just a very tiny gauge nail, which is almost invisible. Here are the typical elements for all the doors we've been making for this kitchen. Stiles and rails. In this case, cherry, because this is going to have a natural finish. And a panel. On our painted cabinets, we used a medium density fiberboard panel. This panel is medium density fiberboard in the middle, but it's covered with a thin veneer of cherry on each side. And we like that very much because if I were to glue solid cherry together, it wants to expand and contract quite a bit. It could cup. This is very stable. Now to join the elements, I'm using a mortise and tenon joint. There are grooves in the rails and the stiles. And what I do is apply glue to the tenons after they're formed on the rails and slip them into the groove. It makes a very strong joint. And the simplicity of this system is that it also gives us a groove to receive the panel. Now when the door is assembled, there's no space between the panel and the rails and stiles. And you could leave it like that. It's a very plain door. But we wanted to embellish it a bit, make it a little fancier. So I made this molding on my router table. And that gets applied on top of the panel and against the stiles and rails. It's a little bit proud. We think it gives it a nice, rich look. You could also use other different profiles, but this is the one we like. First thing I want to do is make the grooves. Here's the setup. I've taken the 2 saw blades from my dado set and installed those. That gives me a 1/4 inch wide blade. I've set the fence a 1/4 inch from the blade. So my stock is 3/4 of an inch thick. When I push it through, that groove is going to be almost perfectly centered. But I want to make sure, so I turn it around and push it through again, giving me an absolutely centered groove. And I also like this featherboard to keep the stock tight to the fence. Here's the setup to form the tenons. I've widened my dado to 5/8 of an inch and set the height to meet the edge of the groove. I've installed my sacrificial fence and exposed only a 1/2 inch of the blade, because that's the length of the tenon. A couple passes through with the miter gauge, and I should end up with a tenon that's just a slip fit. Perfect. The material for the panels is a 1/2 inch thick, so I have to rabbet the back side so that it'll fit into my groove. The setup is the same as making the tenons, except I've lowered the blade slightly. Well, now I'm ready to do a little assembly. Glue in the groove where it meets the tenon, and a little bit of glue on each tenon. The panel requires no glue. That's just going to slip into our groove. And get the other rail on, the other style, and we'll clamp it up. Now the molding is next. Mitered at the corners, a little bit of glue on the stiles and rails, get them set in place, and then pin them as needed. And that takes care of the door. On our base unit, there'll be a couple small drawers at the top built using the same techniques we've used every place else in the kitchen. Down below, there'll be a large drawer box behind the two doors. So you'll have to open the doors and slide it out. That's for bottle storage. Here are the elements. And all the drawer boxes in the kitchen have been made up of this pre-finished drawer stock. It comes in 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12-inch widths. The 12-inch width actually has a finished band on both edges, so you can make smaller drawers if you want. I like to join the sides to the front with dovetail joinery, so I cut the tails and the side pieces. I make the pins in the front piece. And all the drawer stock, the narrow widths come with a 1/4-inch groove, but I've widened it here because I want to use 1/2-inch plywood on the bottom of my large drawers where I have heavy storage. So now I'm ready to glue it up. Now the dovetail joint has been around for a long time, and by its shape, it's a very strong joint even without glue. And it's perfect for an application like this where we're going to be pulling on that drawer front. Now for the bottom, and then the back. Now occasionally you'll see dovetails even at the back corners of a drawer, but I think that's a little bit of overkill. We'll simply glue it and pin it. Well, here it is. Now you'll note there are a couple notches at the back of the drawer, and that's going to be to receive the hardware, which I'll put in later. I'll have to take the top out of the clamps, sand it smooth, and round over the front edge. We'll discuss the wall paneling during the installation of this cabinet, but right now let's go into the finishing room and talk about how we're going to finish this cherry. The finish couldn't be simpler. I'm applying an antique oil finish. I don't want to cover up this wood, I want to highlight it, and this will do the job. I apply a coat with a brush, let it set for 5 minutes, and wipe off the excess. After it dries overnight, I'll repeat the process. Now, this will still allow the cherry to darken with age, which is what we want. There'll be one exception. The top, the countertop, will get the oil, but we'll follow it up with some coats of polyurethane for extra protection. Well, how's this for a transformation? Quite a difference from when you saw it last time. I've hung these upper doors, installed the glass panels. A mirror goes in the back of the cabinet with glass shelves, and it really magnifies everything that's in this cabinet. A multi-piece cornice wraps all the way around the top. Put new casings around the window, and I made these columns that are fluted and chamfered to make an architectural statement to say this is where the bar ends. The countertop has been treated with polyurethane for durability. We have a copper sink here. All the rest of the cherry and cabinets have been treated with an oil. Now this is a big hit. Behind these doors, you have this nice deep storage drawer. No longer is there a dark cabinet where you can't see a thing. Our wine seems very comfortable over here in the wine storage unit. And why not? Who wouldn't be comfortable at a spot like this? Next time we'll be installing all the cabinets that we've been building over the last several episodes. The base cabinets have to go in, plumb and level and secured to the wall. We'll hang the wall cabinets and deal with any out-of-plumb wall conditions by scribing them to the wall. In the bar area, we'll install wall paneling and we'll finish everything off with a nice crown molding. So there's a lot of things that we've never done before. So join us next time right here in the new Yankee Workshop. If you've enjoyed this new Yankee project, you may want to try some of the others. There are projects meant for the workshop, the garden, the kitchen, and many more. So whether you're a fan of Shaker style, or colonial, arts and crafts, or Chippendale, there may be a Norm project you'd like to build. Whether it's a clock or a gazebo, a picnic bench or a Windsor chair, a child's toy or a sailboat, visit the New Yankee website at www.newyankee.com for a complete listing.